Hello, everybody. So I just beat Aberoth after beating my last Harbinger, and I wanted to talk about it because this build is crazy, and I feel like a lot of people want to play it. So this is a build that beat Aberoth at like 315 corruption. And traditionally, I've only taken builds to Aberoth after they hit like 600 or 550 corruption. That's where I felt comfortable bringing them. But I thought this build had so much damage when I was going through the monoliths that I was just like, I wonder how it'll fare. And I was just talking with my friends, screen sharing a little bit, and I just randomly beat him. So that's what it was. Let's talk about the build, shall we? So looking at how this plays, basically, we cast Multistrike and everything else is automated. So it's a one-button build, super easy to play. And as you can see, my smites do like somewhere between like 80k or something like that. It's kind of hard to tell because there's so many hits going all the time, but it's like 80 to 90k going on. But that's when we're at full mana. If we lower our mana, and this is what we do before we go into every echo, we get significantly more damage because we're using the Amulet Devotion, right? So now if you look at it, we're getting like 150k or maybe occasionally like 200k. Basically, we're getting about 2 to 3 times more damage. It's kind of hard to tell with all the numbers going on. And that's just from Smite. We're doing other hits too. We're doing our multi-strike hits. We're doing our healing hands hits. So there's a lot going on. And we have some ignite stacks too going on in the background. So our Smite is our main damage dealer. We're critting with it. We're having an auto cast on our multi-strike. And otherwise, we're just running at the enemy. Right? Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So let's go through all the skills. Smite, this is our big damage dealer. We have 100% more hit damage versus ignited enemies. We are igniting them, so pretty easy 100% of the time. Sacrifice, this gives us 250% more damage for 15% of our current health. So we need enough healing to maintain this, which is why we also have 3 points in Atonement to reduce Sacrifice's health cost by 60%. And then we also have 2 points into Conviction for an extra base critical strike chance of 4%. This is just a guarantee that we crit. Otherwise, we have 2 points into Blinding Flash just to get there. It gives us 20% more damage versus Blinded. I think that if I had more points into Smite, I would put them into Deep Impact because that would give us 100% crit multi for Smite, which is a little bit more valuable than Blinding Flash, which would give us an additional 30% more damage over there. So those are things to note about Smite. We're just purely using it for damage, so we don't have any of the utility stuff here. And we didn't have the points to get it to Lightning because you would need 3 extra points to get it there. So we're sticking with the Fire Smite. Okay, Multi-Strike. This is the skill that kind of pieces everything together. We are using Multi-Strike to trigger Blade Storm, and Blade Storm generates more swords, our additional swords when there aren't additional enemies to attack, focus the same enemy for an additional mana cost. And then we're transforming our swords into smites. So when there's one enemy alive, all our swords hit the same target and we melt single targets, which is really nice. When we're fighting big packs, our smites kind of go everywhere, wherever our blades go. So we just want our smites to do enough damage to kill the enemy within a couple hits. Otherwise, we're taking Perfect Steel for +1 to max stacks, maxing out Relentless Advance for that max attack speed that we can get. And then we have a little bit of extra armor and block effectiveness per stack, which is 3 stacks. So it has a base of 2, +1 with Perfect Steel, 3 stacks. So 3 times 6, 180 armor per stack and block effectiveness, or total, not per stack. If I had extra points here, I would put extra points into Vengeful because the chance to multi-strike on block, we are blocking a lot of hits per point is 34. So even one, it has a 1 second cooldown. So if you did 1 per second, right, you would get an additional multi-strike, which would be an additional 3 smites on the target. So significant damage uptime over there. But instead, we are going towards Determination, which is damage at max stacks, 3 points so that we can get to Sweeping Blows, which is target area and damage area upped. And why are we doing this? Because we need more quality of life when doing mapping, right? Multi-strike is our primary damaging ability, right? Because it triggers our smite, but we just need it to hit the target so that we can cast more smites. So it just makes our life a little bit easier. I did initially have it in Vengeful, but that's how I felt about it. Healing Hands. So this is another big utility skill for us. It also does a lot of damage. We are going into Cleric's Hammer to trigger off a melee hit, Rise Chariot for a dash, and then I hadn't been doing this before, but Sunshroud is really good because it makes us immune. So I wish I had been taking these two instead of Unspect Lunges, but you know, you live and you learn. Then it's the usual Healing Hands package. You go off to the right to turn it into a spell, get the less damage from Void and Necro, a little bit of spell damage per healing effectiveness, and then spell damage per specialized buff, additional damage, and then we turn it into a melee hit. This is actually the interesting thing. You don't always need it to be a melee hit, but in this case we do because we're running Polaris. And Polaris says, over here, it says 35% chance to cast Smite on melee hit. Since we do 2 Healing Hands and 2 Multistrikes per second, we're doing 4 melee hits per second, and that pretty much guarantees like 1 to 1.5 extra Smites per second. You obviously want to get that up to like 6 melee hits per second to make that capped out at 3 extra Smites, but you need a lot of attack speed for that, and we don't have that. So Healing Hands helps us reach that pseudo cap. Otherwise, you want to take Purity of Thought in Blessed Parish because Healing Hands has 11 mana cost, and this makes it 0. So you want those. Okay, so that's Healing Hands. Then we're taking Symbols of Hope. I left it as B after I realized it's a mistake, but I beat Aberoth like this. So I'll mention it when we get there. I put points into Empowering Symbols, damage granted per active symbol. We have 4 of them, so that would be, for me right now, 80%, but for you it should be 100%. Fire damage per symbol plus 3, crit strike chance per symbol 12. This is just all the points I had. Then you want to go up into Tetragram for the extra maximum symbol, and then over to Sigils of the, Sign of the Guardian for block chance per active symbol. So just cap out that block chance and get some block effectiveness per symbol. I misunderstood how Symbol of Righteousness worked. I thought it would also work on me. It's only on your other allies. So don't take this and put the extra point into Empowering Sigils. Okay, cool. If you need some more mana help, there's Quiet Mind. If you need more healing, there's Invigorate. And if you put enough points, you can get another maximum sigil, which is cool. But that's a lot of points, so I didn't do it. Okay, so symbols, it auto casts. If you cast it, you consume all of your symbols, you get some ward, and then you take 5% less damage per symbol consumed. So for me, that would be 20% damage reduction if I needed it in a pinch. Okay, Abyssal Echoes. So in this spot, before I had Holy Aura, I was running this while I was leveling, and I did not intend to go Abyssal Echoes until I went Devotion, and I needed a way to burn my mana. So we are taking Abyssal Echoes for 2 reasons, right? First is that we need time compression in order to burn all our mana away. And then second, we also get a buff called Nether Coating that gives us attack speed when we have it and damage versus blinded. We are always blinding the enemy because we have Blinding Flash, so they're always going to be blinded. And Abyssal Echoes applies blind with Myopia, so, you know, they're always blinded. So we're burning our mana away, we're blinding them, we're doing more damage. We can do a lot more damage with Abyssal Echoes, so it is a handy buff to have. Every other point in the history, I don't really know if it's good or not. Those are the only things I say you need to do. I beat Aberoth without knowing what the effect of this was. So I went into Ignite Chance, Spell Void damage on hit, and then Void Putrefier. So I turned it into a fire damage skill, and then it now does healing on you or your allies. So I guess we get some extra healing from it. And then now it also scales with Attunement for healing. So we heal even more with it, which is nice, I guess, but we're not really doing it for the healing. So I don't know. These might be dud points. You know, it's fire. We're scaling fire. I took it to be thematic. The reason we're taking it is for Embrace from the Darkness for that Nether Coating buff and time compression so we can burn through our mana. So that's why we're doing it. You guys don't have to go on this right side. Just keep that in mind. Okay, let's briefly talk about Holy Aura because that's what we were doing before. Holy Aura is actually really interesting because it has Flame Burst, which is an additional melee attack. So it counts as an additional hit. It has Inner Flame, which gives us more stacks per melee hit. So at 10 stacks, it does Flame Burst. And I believe Flame Burst is actually not a melee hit. I don't know if I just misspoke. But it's not a melee hit. And then we can increase the damage of Flame Burst. So it's a spell. It scales with attunements. It does fire damage. Very similar to what Smite is already. And then it also has global fire damage, which is nice. So a bunch of useful things in Holy Aura. It can also give us attack speed. It can also give us crit chance. It can also give us crit multi. There's a bunch of offensive things it can do really cool. It can also give us pen, which is really cool. So there's a bunch of cool things in Holy Aura that are valuable. But I need to mention this. There's also some interesting defensive things we can do. So over here, Shelter from the Storm gives us elemental resistance and endurance. So we're already endurance capped, so we don't care about it. But Ellie Res, because of our passive tree, because of Defiance, our endurance threshold gets 2% bonus per uncapped elemental resistance. So, Defiance is good because it can give it, Holy Aura, you can go into 5 points into Shelter from the Storm, so you can get those extra points into elemental resistance. Okay, but that's not the only thing that's cool, right? Vital Boon can give you more health regen, and we love health regen with this build, as you will find out. And Faith can give you ward regen, and as you will find out, there is very much an opportunity for wards in this build. Shielded by Faith can give you ward retention, which, as I'm saying, you haven't seen it yet, but ward has so much potential on this build. And then ward gained on block. We are blocking and we do care about ward, so against the odds also has a ton of value. So there's a ton of things here that has value defensively as well, not just offensively. So Holy Aura is actually a skill that has a ton of potential, right? A ton of potential that I haven't explored. But we're running symbols right now because of all the damage it gives us. I don't think Holy Aura damage compares, but there is a lot of defensive utility there. So as an alternative to symbols, if you have the offense already, you can just run Aura for the defenses. Okay, so that's the skills. Let's talk about the items, because we've talked a bunch about the skills, and I think in order to understand some of the things I'm alluding to, we need to talk about the items. So I'll first go through the required items, then I'll talk about the not required legendaries, and some of the alternatives you can do, and then lastly, I'll talk about the exalteds. So let's go through it. First off, Polaris' Sacred Light. This is a required item for the build. We use the spell damage per strength and the melee damage per attunement pretty well. We also use the chance to cast Smite on melee hit, and we also use the all attributes. So every line of text on Polaris' Sacred Light is useful. I have a 3LP, I just don't have a good slam for it right now, so I'm waiting to get attack speed and crit multi, so that would be ideal. And then I don't know what suffix I would want on there, but that's what we're doing with Polaris' Sacred Light. Crit multi is first priority, and then melee attack speed, because you can also get melee attack speed on your gloves. So crit multi, ideally, for more damage. Polaris' Sacred Light, this is a required item. Then let's go to Peak of the Mountain. So we need to cap our crit somehow. We have a little bit of crit from our passives, a little bit of crit from our skills. We need a good way to cap it. Peak of the Mountain is a good way because we don't care about leech. We love attributes and we don't care about leech, so Peak of the Mountain is a good way to do it. The reason we don't care about leech is because we're running Healing Hands. Healing Hands gives us a bit of built-in healing. It gives us 50 health, and then it gives us warmth, which heals us 80 health over the next 3 seconds. And then we also have a ton of health regen. So we don't really care that much about Peak of the Mountain. And then the stat we care about most is attunement, so we're stacking attunement on there. Okay, so that's the second required item. And then the third required item is Bastion of Honor. You can run other shields. I did for a little while, but Bastion is kind of required to play it in higher corruption and against bosses. And the reason is it gives you 1% block chance per strength against enemies within 4 meters. So our strength is 72. With our base block chance of 32, this takes us to 104%. We have capped block. So it also gives us mana and health and strength, all things that we care about. And then since it doesn't have that much block effectiveness, we add some more as a tier 7 onto it. So wait till you get the tier 7 block effectiveness and then swap into the shield. Okay. Last required item, Foot of the Mountain. We have mana problems. This gives all attributes, which we care about. It needs move speed because it only comes with 10% max, so we put move speed on there. If you get 2 or 3 LP, move speed and strength, move speed and attunement would be good combinations. Endurance is always a good stat for us. So we like all the things on there, and this is the thing that makes it required. Gain 1 stack of Mountain Endurance each second while not moving, up to 3 stacks. And since when we cast our Multistrike, we're not really moving. That's the goal. -2 mana cost per stack of Mountain's Endurance. That's the whole thing. We use a ton of mana. We reduce the mana as much as we can, but when we're hitting single target, we get the +3 mana from Armament, which is a node inside of Multistrike, +3 mana per smite we cast. And so, since we're casting 3, we're getting +9 mana per cast. So if you look over here, and I'm fighting like a single target, my mana is steadily going down. It's never really reaching its peak. So when you're looking at like mana over here, when it's lower, we never reach the peak. And this is with Foot of the Mountain, right? So we would be guzzling through our mana without it. This is the only way we have in order to make it work. So Foot of the Mountain, our last required item. Okay, now let's talk about the pseudo required, right? Those 4 items are what make this build work. Now we have 3 more, right? So let me talk about the next most important item, which is Devotion, right? Devotion is important because it has the line of text that says +1 spell damage with Smite per 5 missing mana. So that's why we're stacking mana. If I consume all my mana and start hitting this target, you will see that I do like 200k-ish, right, per hit. But if I didn't consume all my mana, which I should have done this before and not after, let's restore my mana really quickly. Okay. If you look at it now, we're doing like 100k per hit. So the difference is drastic, right? Our damage is doubled when we have low mana, and that wasn't even the lowest it can go, but that's where I normally fight bosses. That's where I'm comfortable with, at about like 200 or like 150 mana. So our goal for Devotion is just to have the spell damage from missing mana. If we could also use the lightning damage, that'd be cool. We just don't have the points in the Smite tree to get to lightning damage, so we don't care about that. Healing effectiveness is nice, endurance is nice, but that's why we're taking Devotion. I went to like 150 or 200 corruption without it. I wasn't having that big of a problem. My damage was decent. I was critting for like 8k with Smite at that like corruption. So it is still a decent build, still decent damage. But when I want to progress further, I felt that I needed a lot more damage to make it work, especially single target. So Devotion was the way to go. And get a tier 6 or tier 7 mana on there if you can. Tier 7 ideally. Okay. So that's Devotion. That's our next highest priority legendary. After this, the last 2 are kind of nice to have. Orion's Descent. It gives us 30 to 45% chance to cast Smite on hit at a maximum of 6 per 10 seconds. This cooldown resets when you use a potion. So it's kind of hard to tell because all our smites are hitting the same target. But essentially, we're doing more, right? Because we have 9 smites per second plus 4 melee attacks per second. That's 13 hits per second. 13 hits per second at 30% odds. That means in like 2 seconds, we'll essentially use all of the 6 smites. So every 2 seconds, if you're chugging a potion, you can reset perfectly. Obviously, I'm not intending for this to be like a perfect reset kind of thing, but like, you know, you can use this to reset the number of smites. You can get an extra 6 every 2 seconds. So that's a lot of extra damage. On here, I have a 2 LP. You want 2 defensive affixes, hopefully. So like health and armor, or health and health, or health and hybrid health. Hybrid health would be great if you had a tier 6 or 7. Ideally, that's what you'd get. You want more survivability on your belt. It only comes with a base of 40 armor. So there are a lot better exalted belts. Other than this, if you need defenses, I would recommend not using this belt and just using an exalted belt. Okay, and then Vessel of Strife. I will say, I think this is BIS. I think this is best in slot. And the reason is, we have a ton of health regen. And we're taking 36% of our health regen and applying it to ward as ward regen. Then we're giving us ward retention, and then we're giving ourselves mana, and then we're giving ourselves spell void damage, and we're doing a lot of hits, right? So we have, you know, value out of the spell void damage. It might not scale with everything, but it still scales. and then we increase that void damage that we're doing, and then the base gives us mana as well. And then all you need to get on there is like a strength, and if you get a 2 LP like strength and attunement, and it's good. And if you can get a plus levels to smite, that would also be really good, right? So 3 really good options to get on this vessel. We have an extra, basically from our relic slot, we have an extra 800 max health, which is kind of hard to get, right? The relic slot isn't normally for max health. So there you go. So that's the point of all of our items. I will say, now that I'm going to go over our exalts, there are other legendaries I was using and was considering using. So let's go over our Sentinel body armor. First, we have the Azure Solarum plate, which gives us armor, endurance, and fire damage. This is our only real source of fire damage in the build. We don't have that much increases to fire damage. So if you got 80% here, that would be better. We want mana, we want attunement. So those are good prefixes to have. We could also use strength here and that would be fine. Suck fixes, health and armor, both really good. So this was sort of a perfect item when I found it. I mentioned this yesterday, but I was like, I don't know if I can ever replace this, right? There's something else I want to use, and I'm going to explain it now, but this is a really good piece. It makes me incredibly tanky. Then there's Wall of Nothing, right? And Wall of Nothing is very confusing because it doesn't do any of the things that we would normally assume it to do, but if I put it on there, you'll understand, right? So you have a 10 to 16% chance to take 0 damage on hit, so that's already good. It gives you ward decay threshold, right? And we're generating wards statically, so that's nice. It gives you endurance threshold, and we are using a shield, so we're expecting to hit, so we can use more endurance threshold. And then we take 76% of our endurance threshold and add it as our ward decay threshold. And as you can see, with the additional 63 ward per second, we have a static 2,200 ward from 800, right? 800 with the other Azure plate, and then 2,000 with this. Unfortunately, we are a little bit less tanky. Our one-shot, like we can take more damage from a one-shot, but we can't recover as fast because it's ward generation. So if I could get my armor elsewhere, this would be good. So my armor went down. It's at 3,000 right now. It was at like 5,000. Yeah, it was at 5,400 with that because I'm missing the base armor and I'm missing the increased armor. So if I could get base armor from somewhere else, then I could probably run this, right? It only has 220, which is 200 less base armor. So if I could get the increased from my gloves by using Eternal Gauntlets that were exactly like this that I'm running right now, then I would be in a good spot. And then I also put attunement on there because, of course, attunement increases our mana and our damage, so great. Okay, so that explains the Wall of Nothing. Let me now explain the gloves because I was talking about them. These gloves are insane. Tier 7 attunement, melee attack speed, LE res, and health are all the things we want. Shred armor on hit, even better. Perfect item. However, before we got this, we were running Falcon Fist. Falcon Fist has up to a tier 7 melee attack speed, right? As the implicit, as you can see second from the bottom. It also has a tier 6 melee attack speed put on there, max rolled. So it gives us a lot of damage. The armor endurance is nice, but we're already endurance capped, so we don't care about the armor. It's like whatever. It's barely anything. When I got this new exalted set of gloves, the base isn't that good, but the affixes are so good that I had to use it over Falcon Fist. Ideally, I would have this on an Eternal Gauntlet and I would live happily ever after. But, you know, another option if you're leveling and you have a Falcon Fist, if you can get a tier 6 melee attack speed, you're in a good spot. Okay. Rings. We need exalts to fill out our defenses, and our rings are here to do that. So this ring is important because we need attunement, we need physical resistance, and we need elemental resistance. I've explained it already, but actually I might not have. Defiance gives us endurance threshold per 2% uncapped elemental resistance. So we want to uncap our LE res in order to get more endurance threshold so we can be tankier for longer. And then we need the strength in order, remember I'm at 72, which makes my max block chance at 104. Without this, it would be at like 90 something, I guess, which is fine. It's like okay, but I would rather be block capped personally. I would rather be block capped. So I'm putting the strength on here. Otherwise, you could run The Symbols of Hope ring, I have one of those with attunement on there, but because I need the Fizz Res, I'm not wearing it right now. Okay, so that's gear. Let's talk about passives. From the Sentinel tree, we want Strength, Fire Res, Void Res, all good. Juggernaut's great. We want Vitality and Health Regen. I told you we love Health Regen, so increasing our Health Regen is great. And then we want Mana, so we're taking Time and Faith. From Void Knight, we want Abyssal Endurance and Sorrow and Steel. Abyssal Endurance gives us less void damage taken, which is nice. And then Sorrow and Steel gives us more area, which is nice. And then a little bit more melee damage and armor, which, you know, nice to have, but whatever. Forge Guard, Weapons Master, +5 strength. It's huge. We also get increased melee attack speed with the sword, which we are using. So more damage there. Very nice. Paladin, kind of everything's happening here. This is the core of the build. This is why we're running like the ward retention stuff. This is why we're running a shield. Everything's here. So Conviction, this is all our damage. Increased fire damage, fire pen. We love it. Next, Defiance. I've already mentioned it. Attunement, Ellie Res, Endurance Threshold per 2% uncapped Ellie Res. Very nice. Honor, it's really just there to get us to Heaven's Bulwark, which gives us spell damage with a shield. At 5 points, it also gives us reduced bonus damage taken from crits, which is huge. Phoenix Strike is really just here to get us to Riot Strength, +3 strength, which is nice, but also fire resist shred per 2%, per 2 strength. Remember, we have 72, 36, 36 times 3. That's like 100% basically, 90 something. So we capped out our fire res shred. So you get a maximum stacks of 10 stacks of fire resist shred. Each stack shreds fire resistance by 2%. So 20% shred with this. So with your shred and your penetration added together, hopefully you can take them as low as possible. That's the goal, right? Okay. We don't care about anything else really. You could probably put a point inside a Holy Icon if you had the time. Necrotic resistance, good. Healing is effectiveness is fine. It doesn't apply to health regen, so whatever. And then base health. We don't really care about anything else. Throwing, lightning, healing effectiveness, and we really love Faith Armor. So this is where the whole ward thing is based around. Faith Armor gives us increased armor and increased health regen, and then increased health regen per attunement. So we want an attunement stack so we can get more health regen and more health regen because we don't have any healing. And also we can turn the health regen into ward generation with Vessel of Strife. So double dipping, right? So our attunement stacking is huge for Faith Armor. And then we also get Prayer Aegis, which gives us health and endurance threshold and endurance threshold per 2 attunement with 7 endurance threshold per 2 attunement. This is huge because we want our endurance threshold to be as high as possible because we have capped endurance and we are always doing damage to ourselves with our smite. So we want to remain in that endurance range as long as possible. Plus, if we eventually run the, what is it called? Wall of Nothing, we can then use the endurance threshold to turn it into ward decay threshold to also give ourselves more ward. So it's really big, right? Really big. Sanctuary Guardian, we like armor with a shield, but we're really just putting 5 points in here for the all res. Remember, more Ellie res is good. All res is insane. So this is just an insane 5 points right here. We don't care about cast speed. We're not manually casting. For a manual cast build, I feel like running a shield is still not good enough, but you know, that's just my opinion. Then Righteous Firebrand, more fire pen per 100% increased healing effectiveness. So as much healing effectiveness as we can get. Let's see, how much do we have? I think healing effectiveness is in other. We're at 133%, so only 5%. If we could get more, that'd be nice, but we're really here for the melee attack speed. Duality is the best node in Paladin. It gives us all the stats we want, so perfect, right? Health, damage, healing effectiveness, and mana, huge. Covenant of Light, it was better when I had both Holy Aura and Symbols of Hope. Now that I'm just running Symbols, you really only want 1 point here because you want 5 points to get the health regen from Symbols of Hope. 5, so 1 per each. I think that's 20 total. Then also armor mitigation applies to damage over time. Pretty big, right? Getting it built into Paladin. And also increased fire damage and move speed. All my extra points are going into here because move speed is crazy for what the build wants to do. Okay, so that is the passives. That's pretty much everything explained about the build. You don't have to go into this immediately. I was running a cheaper version. Obviously, I As soon as I got Multistrike and Smite, I swapped into this. Probably should have run hammers for a little longer, but I did it anyways. And I leveled with it. I transitioned into all these items with it. I beat Aberoth right after Monoliths with it. So y'all should try it. I'm going to put an Aberoth kill right after this. Let's see. Let me prove that I've done it. Forgotten Knights, Harbingers. Aberoth kills 1. And this is the only character I have. So there you go. I beat my highest corruption Harbinger at 316. So I literally killed my Harbinger, went to Aberoth, beat Aberoth. So that's all there is to say about it. Peace out. See you later.